High vibes, everybody. I just want to get on here today, and I'm actually going to be making a video that's a little bit more formal. No, I don't normally on my channel make stuff a little bit more formal, but now I feel like I'm going to go ahead and get into it. So today, what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk a little bit about water and the interplay and the interactions of water and how it relates to our inner self and our outer self, and actually go into some of the different aspects of it that you might not go into. And again, I just want you guys to know that this is all from my firsthand experience. It's not really coming from different sources. I might talk about different things, but this is all firsthand experience, so don't take this as exact knowledge or exact fact. So first of all, I want to go ahead and we just looked up on Google the definition of water, just so that you guys can all be on the same page as to the basic definition that I'm going off of. And it says water is a colorless, transparent, odorless, tasteless liquid that forms the seas, rivers, and rain, and is the basis of fluids of living organisms. So with that, we can go into the different forms of water that's actually around. It says the rivers and the lakes and the oceans. So water plays a part in all these different aspects of our natural environment. You have the ocean, you have the river, you have the lakes, you have the seas, you have ponds, you have little tiny rivers, little streams that you can go to, that you can see water, you can interact with water. There's waterfalls. Water actually is a lot of places around the world, in different ways, where there's water within us. It says it's the basis of fluids of living organisms. So that means it's a key part of a lot of different things. So I'm going to just go into first talking about oceans. I'm going to talk about bigger stuff, and I'll start working my way down to some of the smaller things so that you guys can start seeing the interplay and reactions with it. So I'm going to start off talking about the ocean. So with the ocean, we have, there's the different oceans around the world. I'm not exactly sure the names of all of them. Everybody knows Pacific and Atlantic and all that. But with the oceans, there's also, it's a bigger current, it's a bigger flow, because it's a bigger body of water, it's a bigger pool of energy that's actually accumulated there. And so when people think of the oceans, they're just thinking of what separates the land. But if you look at how water actually covers the majority of the world, and how it actually is influencing the majority of the world as well, when you look at how the oceans are actually interplaying with each other, then you can start seeing how the energy is actually flowing around the earth. Now, with currents, you will see in water especially that there might be different currents. There's some, like you'll see up there, where there's going to be a current. So say this is the top of the ocean right there, the surface, and everybody sees it. There might be little waves up top. Some of it might just be calm, and then there's some of it that could be swirling in different places. But that's just the base form of it. So a lot of people, when you look at water, they just take it for the base level. They start seeing just what's on the surface, and there might be some animals popping up over the surface or right on top, showing you what type of life and what type of environment it is in. But then once you start getting lower into it, when you start getting deeper into it, then you'll see, okay, this is all going to this current. But then right below it, this one's actually going this way. So you have one current going that way, and another current going that way. And it might even have one underneath it that's going this way. So with that, the deeper meaning in there is you can see how just because something on the surface level is showing you one thing doesn't mean that right below it's not going to be flowing a different way. People might have certain things on their mind, like that they're actually just showing everybody in public. That's your surface thoughts, your surface emotions, your surface feelings that you're actually putting out there. But then once you start to go down a little bit deeper, you be like, maybe they're actually not even thinking in that direction. That's just the persona they're putting out. And a lot of people just put out that persona. They're not actually thinking about, what's going on. They're just putting out a persona that everybody will see. So we can call this like a general thought process right there. And then when you get down to the next level, that'll just be a personal thought process right there. So where you'll see everybody, what they put out on the surface is for what everybody see. That's most likely what you'll see people at work, see people walking around. That's what they want people to see. But then when you get down a little bit deeper to the personal, and the flow might actually be going in the complete opposite way. Now, some people, it is going in the same way. It is having a certain flow that way. But other people, it is going back and forth. So you got to remember that the water is immutable. It can change. It can go either way. One day your general thought process might be going that way. The next day it might be going the opposite way. So you can't just, say that water is going to be in one way, because it is constantly moving. Like, you'll see the oceans is constantly flowing. Like, even when you see the ocean is nice and still, it's not really still. You can still, if you're on the boat, you see yourself rocking back and forth, swaying a little bit, and it might be very slight, but you are still moving, because the water is always in motion, always flowing, always in that flow, and always having that energy to renew itself and keep going. And that plays into then when you go a little bit deeper into the water, when you see, okay, now there's even a different current. And it's not just these currents, because there could be some even playing through here. And once you start going through here, you might get to a certain spot where it's actually interchanging there. And when you get into those different spots, there can be turbulence. That's those times where you're starting to, it's starting to conflict, like, because you might actually be trying to go deeper into yourself, deeper into your subconscious, deeper into your mind. But there's these different flows that you have to go through in order to actually get there. And all this, again, goes back to water, how the water flows, how the water interchanges. And this is just, in the ocean, how there's different currents. And, they say, like, sometimes you might be swimming, you might get caught into a cross stream that was going all kinds of places, and you get swept way over there. And you were over here. You didn't even want to be over there at the time. But you don't want to, have that happen. You want to be able to at least flow with it. Like, if that does happen with you, you want to be able to go with the flow with it. But let me just erase that real quick. But then also with the oceans, you can see how it changes its form. Like, there's certain parts of the ocean that's extra cold, that's no different hot. Water is a very good conductor of energy. So it's a conductor of that heat. It's a conductor of cold. It's a conductor of electricity. It's a conductor of a lot of different things, a lot of different current, a lot of different currency. So, and that's another reason why the water has that current, it has that flow, because it is that renewable energy that can keep going. And a lot of different people try to use water in order to fuel different things. Like, even NASA uses water to fuel their spaceships. Like, they break down the water, and the actual energy from breaking down the water is what combusts and actually has the flow. It's not smoke that's coming out of the spaceship. That's actual steam. That's water. So you think about, they're saying, oh, we're actually getting to space. If they are getting to space, then that steam is what's actually pushing them. That water is actually pushing them, using a different flow of currency, because without that current, they won't be able to get there. But what I was about to get into was, in the ocean, you'll see there's different glaciers and stuff. And then also you'll see that most of the ocean is salt water. And then when you start getting to those colder areas, when you see that the water is starting to change form, it's coming from a liquid into its solid state, you'll start to see along those glaciers, there's salt. There's all kinds of like rivers of salt. There's a whole nother river that is just salt, because the water is separated from the salt, and vice versa throughout the time. And you'll see the different concentrations in the area, and then how that affects everything. So the way that relates to yourself is, as you're changing, as you're going through these different things, you might go from a mode where you're able to just flow and go with the flow and see what you're doing. But then as you're flowing and going through, there's a spot where now you made a glacier. And then as you're making the glacier, you're freezing up, certain parts of yourself are starting to fall down. The heavier parts of yourself start to go down. And that might be getting caught up into that other cross current that you were going against, and not the one that would keep flowing that way if you didn't actually start freezing up. But that's only like for part of yourself, because there's different aspects of that you can get into, as far as how it freezes, how it does that. But that's for you to do your own inner search and outer search on to know, in order to get more clarification of that. I'm just going to go ahead and give you some of the more deeper basics of actually learning from the elements, because I've said once before that you can learn a lot from water. So this video is going to clarify what I mean by how you can learn a lot from water. So as that salt is actually coming down and flowing off of you, that can represent like different parts of yourself that now that you have become stagnant pretty much and frozen in a certain area. Now certain parts of yourself wants to keep flowing, because we are those flowing beings. We are that energy that keeps flowing. So we're going to want to keep flowing. We don't want to stay stagnant and frozen. We might want to check out the current over here, or we might want to check out the current down here or somewhere, or then go even deeper and see what actual creatures and different stuff is actually down there. And speaking of that, when you go into the ocean, they say, oh, nobody can really go to the bottom of the ocean because we can't even build anything that can go down there. Well, you can. You can go to the bottom of the ocean within yourself, through meditation, through your practices that you have. And then once you start seeing like the different stuff, you'll start to see, when people say, oh man, this gets deep. because you're going into that deep well. You're going into that inner darkness, that inner light, that dark light that's inside of yourself, to where you'll start to see these different things. And you'll start to see how those different creatures interact. And I'm just saying creatures, but it's different things that's inside yourself. If you want to relate it to your mind, you could also relate it to life, depending on how you want to see it. Is the different flows as you start getting deeper into different things, you'll start to see there's different aspects of it. Like you might start a business, and when you first start your business, you're seeing all the surface thoughts, all the initial things, but then once you start getting into it, you start being like, oh man, there's details over here that I didn't even know about. There was stuff on this level that I wasn't even sure about, and now then that just creates its own cycle and own flow of energy, its own current. Just like water, its own current that keeps flowing. But that's enough about what I was going to talk about the ocean. But then you can see that there are lakes, and just having spent some time like actually observing how lakes run, because oceans, a lot of times they flow into lakes, they flow into the different rivers and lakes. Actually, I'm going to go ahead and talk about rivers first, because a lot of the oceans, when the water is flowing, then it flows into a river. So you'll have the big body of water as an ocean, and then you'll have the outlet of the river, and then the river might lead to a lake. So we're going to actually just talk about the rivers. Now, when you see a river, those can get a little more different, because it's the same thing. It's water, it still has that flow, it still has that basis, but now the river is in a more concentrated area. So when you think of something that's in a more concentrated area, it's not flowing faster. So let's just say that this right here is the river. So right now, you'd be like, okay, it's going at about that speed. And you're like, okay, that's what you see of the river. But when it starts to get more narrow, then eventually you'll start to see that wavelength that the water was on actually starts to change. It actually starts to get faster, it starts to get stronger, and then you see how the wavelengths start changing, and there's more of them, and there's even more currency, more electricity, more friction that happens with it. Water is one of those elements that actually can relate to a lot of the different states as well, because everybody's saying water is cool, it's peaceful, but what happens when you have a strong rush of water? Like when it's going really fast, it can burn you, it can scrape your skin off, it can do all kinds of things. Water is one of those elements that is so immutable, it's so transferable to different things that it can transform the way that you actually think about different things. It can transform itself into a way that can harm, help, or provide that sustenance, that growth, that extra currency through it. So you want to remember that water has those different elements. But going back to the rivers, you'll see like in rivers, a lot of times there's a lot of boulders and there's a lot of obstacles. So the current is going right here, then there's actually like boulders like along the way, little rocks along the way in there that you'll see that are actually changing up the current. And when you look at this, you can relate that to yourself by seeing how the water crashes over rocks. It's like, okay, I hit a snag, I hit an obstacle in my life, but if you flow like water and actually have that flow, you'll see, okay, I might have hit it, but then it just changed my direction. Now I'm going around it. I'm not actually stopping and hitting a wall. It's not damming up. You don't want to dam up your river. You don't want to dam up that currency that you're having. You want to have that flow. And with the rivers, you can see they always have that flow. They're not getting stopped up. And if they do get dammed up after a while, it'll bust free. So you don't want to have that to where all your thoughts, all your emotions start to pile up, and then they'll start to pile up in one area. So like here, it's all spread out, so it's still got the flow. But then next thing you know, you start having a problem here, and all your problems start building up until now it's just a straight blockage. And then what happens when you block yourself up? You don't have that flow. You don't have that feeling of spirit that's actually flowing through you. You'll start to be feeling a little more constrained. You might start getting stressed out because that pressure is building up. It starts building up to a point where if you don't start to let it out, now it's going to start to crack. And once those cracks start happening, now you don't know what reaction is going to happen. Instead of the river going here, now it's going to overflow, and now it's going over here. And now it's messing up all the stuff over here. Let's say there's a village over here now. And I'm just putting like a little basic, sorry, my drawings are not the best, so I'm just going to do that for a house. But so say that's like where the village is. And now you can dammed all this up. That village represented like all the stability, all the foundation that you have in your life. Now that it's been blocked up and now it's breaking free, now it goes over here and it just washes the whole house away, washes that whole village away, and now it's gone. So like everything that you built around the water, around your currency, has now been destroyed pretty much because you let that block up, you let that current stop flowing to get more stagnant. But then because the current can't really stop, but you stopped it, now it has that friction, that burn that's going to destroy, tear up, destroy. You know, a lot of people say water is life. Water can also be death and destruction. There's always that duality when you think about things, so you have to remember both sides of it when you think about the water. But and then with the rivers, after you see like how it can dam up, you can also see how the interchanging waves actually create different currents, create different flows, to where there's different life all up in there. It's all different life all up throughout the river. Let me erase this, but there's different stuff that you can explore in the river. Even you'll start to see little eddies and little pools in the river that of really calm water, really small spaces where there might be a lot of life. You know, there could not be life, but there's there's those areas that's still flowing within the river. You think, okay, that water just stays there, but if you really sit there and concentrate and look at the water and really pay attention, you'll see that, okay, new water's coming in, other water's going out. So it is still in constant rotation. Even though it looks like it's nice and still, it still has that swirl, it still has that flow, it still has that current. But then you'll see as the rivers go through, then you hit lakes. And then I'm just go ahead and leave this big circle up top representing this. But you have the different lakes. And then with that, that's a whole separate little ecosystem, a whole separate little area from the bigger part, the bigger ocean that it came from. This is now a smaller part of it. You know, when you think about the macrocosm and the microcosm, you start to get down to the microcosm. You know, the ocean being the macrocosm, you know, the big parts of it, the bigger aspects of what you're thinking about, the bigger aspects of what you're trying to go through. But in order to really understand that, because we as a human race still haven't even explored most of the ocean, which should tell you something there. It's like it's so deep, there's so much there that, you know, people can't really explore it, but you can explore the ocean that's within yourself and actually find those different areas and actually explore it. But, you know, you might not want to start at the biggest part. You might want to start a little bit lower and start, you know, doing just basic things to learn. And this, you know, so you want to look at the river, and then you want to look at the lakes, because a lot of times the lakes represent that calm. Everybody's like, oh, it's so still. The water's so calm, it's like a reflection of glass. But then you see the top, and you're like, okay, it is all calm on the top, but what does it look like below? Just like I said with the oceans, with the different currents from the top and the bottom, there's always going to have those different flows, even in a small area. You know, it's going to have the different spots that are like, it might be swirling up depending on what you have going on there, what different life forms are there. You know, so when you're looking into the different elements, you're actually researching these different elements, you want to actually go through and look and see not only what it's doing, but how that relates to you. And then not only how it relates to you, how it relates to other things, how other things interact with it. And you'll start to see a bigger picture, or you'll start to see more of the defined pixels of the collage. I've talked about that before. You can go back and check out the videos, but you'll see the different pixels of the actual collage, and you'll be like, okay, this is how it actually relates to the bigger part. Without this part, no, this part would be different. And you start to see how the relationship between them interplays, and how the relationship between yourself starts to change and interplay as well. And you'll start to see that, okay, there might be a different section here. There might be a small section there that I might want to look at. That might have some interesting stuff over there, because it might be covered up by moss. It might be covered up by, you know, some seaweed. It might be covered up by fish. And you're not even sure what's going on over there. You're not sure what's happening. But that's for you to be able to go within and actually look and see. And once you actually do those observations, then you will have those experiences to the point where you will see, you'll be able to learn more of it. But that's a little basics of what I want to get into about oceans, rivers, and lakes. I'm going to go ahead and write that and leave that up top so that you guys can keep that as a reminder as we go into the next steps of the video. So, you know, the ocean, rivers, lakes, and I'm going to talk about ponds as well, because these get formed where the water actually evaporates and goes up, and then it rains and it comes down, and it might not even have a bigger source that it's coming from. But if you actually think about what I just said, it does have a bigger source. Where did the water come from? It probably came from the ocean. It probably came from one of those lakes, one of those rivers, and it evaporated and changed its form and decided to move on, because, you know, that's one of the biggest things people, you know, got to learn. It's like, you will evolve, you will change, you will transform yourself, and then it might be time for you to move on. It might be time for you to go somewhere else. I'm not saying like physically move or anything, but, you know, mentally you might have to go to a new new place and learn to have those new experiences and those new profound thoughts that you might not have had before. So just think about the changing of the elements of how they do it. But I'm gonna get back to the ponds. So a lot of the ponds, that's where a lot of the other life comes from. So you can think of a pond as the smaller microcosm of it, to where that's where you see the deer, you see all the animals, predators, everything that come. They're gonna come drink from the pond. They're gonna come drink from that and get their sustenance and nutrients. And you can think of that as basically like your pool of energy, like where you are actually amassing the stuff on a smaller level to where you can access it, because you can't access everything in the ocean. You have to do different things. Like if you want to drink ocean water, you have to boil it, separate the salt and all this stuff in order to drink it. But in that pond, you'd be able to do it. Now it might take a little bit of filtering, if you want it to be clean, but you can still get it. It's easier access to it. So that's why all these other things come to get it. And that's what I talk about, people coming in to, start to change up your environment and basically, drain you of your energy where you can't do certain things. Certain people start to mess with you. They're coming to drink it from your pond. When that's how you get your sustenance. That's how you drink. That's how you survive. That's your life force right there. And then you're letting all these other people come in and drink from it. Now, it's not a bad thing to have, different people drink from your source of water, so that you can actually provide sustenance and that, that extra current for somebody else to, get their thoughts going and actually learn from that. But when you start having somebody, let's say, there's an invasive creature that's coming into the area, and then they come in, and then they start scaring away all the other animals. They're drinking all the pond water, and they're like, no, you can't be over here at this pond water. And then that's, that represents your ego right there. Your ego is going to try to stop you from being able to connect with these different things, to learn from these different experiences, because you're supposed to have people, interact with you. How else are you going to learn these experiences, have these experiences, if you're not interacting? It's one thing to be by yourself, because the pond, I say it's not directly connected to the bigger source, but it is. So once so it is isolated, our individual experience. But when you have all these different things coming in and drinking from it, that's how you start to see the collective experience with it. And then your ego is going to want to stop that. It's going to want to stop to have that flow, have that current of actually going and providing stuff to where you help that out. Now you help the deer out. Now the deer is actually going to teach you something. Or you help the fish out. Now the fish are going to teach you something. But now the ego has come in, it's ate all the fish, it scared away all the deer. Now what you're going to do, you're not going to have those different experiences. But I'm going to go ahead and leave that at that. So think about oceans, rivers, lakes, and ponds, and how they all interplay with each other. Now I'm going to go into the different states of water, because as in the definition where it says it's a liquid, but water can transform. It can be a liquid, gas, or a solid. So let's just go in, because I'm already talking about liquid form. Most people think of water as just a liquid. And, they say, no, this glass is half full, it's half empty. Don't worry about that. Once you realize that it's just, it's just the energy, it's just the information, the knowledge that you're getting from it. It's not whether it's half empty or half full. You start to get those different experiences. You start to see that. But that's for another video. Most people think of water as a liquid form. Most people think of their thoughts in that liquid form, that base form, the most common form that people think of. Most people think of your spirit and your actions in that base form, that liquid form. But in that liquid form, you can flow. It can go in different directions. It doesn't have to go the same thing. It can actually go into different cracks. It can provide sustenance for the trees. It provides different levels for different energy. They use water energy to fuel different stuff. You'll see how water, even drinking water, how it helps to cleanse you out. How water flows through it. What does it do? It clears. It cleanses. It flushes. It washes things away. It's that, that's why they say, you get you a nice fresh cup of water, you feel refreshed, revitalized, you got the extra current, the extra currency within you to do what you want to do the things that you need to do. And so, with water being in its liquid form, you can see the flow a lot better, because it's more dense. You can see it's not as dense as it could be, because it could be a solid, which I'm going to get to in a minute. But then you'll see how that liquid form actually interplays with the different things, and interplays with the different elements of yourself and of people around you, because of the flow of how you interact with them and how they interact with you. That's all the flow. It's all the liquid. It's all the flowing form of it. But then when you get into it, you'll see that the liquid form actually goes into a lot of different things. It seeps into the ground. They have groundwater where, there's ground up here, and then there's actually a level of water down here because the water went from the rain and it came down, and then now it seeped into the ground and it went deeper. Because again, even with the ocean, you see water has those different levels, it has those different forms. Water goes deep, it goes down, and it also doesn't just go down, it goes up, it goes both ways, it goes all ways. It's not just showing you one aspect of it, it shows you all the different aspects of it that you can see. So that's just a little bit into the liquid form. And then you can see from the liquid form, it can start turning into a gas form because, with the rain, you have your lake or your river, that you have, and then it starts to evaporate and it starts to go up. And then you have your clouds. Again, I'm not the best drawer. I'm just trying to give you an example here. But you have your lake, your rivers, and it starts to evaporate, and that currency actually starts to rise up because it starts to get that heat. Because it's such that conductor of that heat, is conductor of that energy, and it's able to transform. It's able to evolve into go into a different form of itself. So when you see the steam, that's still water. People are like, oh man, that's steam. It's not water. It's still water, just in a different form. Just like somebody might see you talking in a business setting and be like, oh, that's not how they talk, because they see you talking in a personal setting, or they see you talking in an intimate setting. They're not used to the different form of yourself. You're not used to how it changes, how you change as you go along with the different environment, and you might have to change up how you go. So you got to then rise up. You got to raise up your vibration, your awareness, in order to see things from a higher perspective, in order to see what's going on. And then as it goes into the clouds are flowing around, and they interact with with the winds and all kinds of stuff. This is going to go a little bit deeper into water plays into a lot of different elements, as I've already talked about. The groundwater, or how water affects how it affects the earth. Water can even flow so fast that it creates canyons, it creates valleys, because it was just rushing and tearing away at the ground. And then it created its own area, it created its own flow, it created its own current and direction. But I'm gonna get back to, as you go up into the clouds and you see the higher perspective of the clouds and how the water now is starting to condense again, because you had to rise up and became that gas form. And now then you start to condense again and start to come back into a little bit more of a solid form. You're getting back into the liquid form. It's just a lighter liquid form because it's still a gas. So even with that, you see how water has the different forms, even between the three stages I was talking about. That trinity. So when you think about how it went from the liquid, and then it starts to go to the gas, and now it starts to get a little bit more dense again, and then you decide where you want to go. The water is now deciding where it wants to go. Think about that with yourself, with how when you start thinking about how the clouds are moving, and then they start building up different things, they're getting the different experiences. This lake that's over here, it evaporated and came up into the clouds. This lake over here, it evaporated and come into the clouds. This river that's right here, it evaporated, and they all formed the big cloud. And now when you're in this cloud, now you can see that you pulled in this different information from these different areas, these different ways of how it interacts with the world, how you interact with different things. And now you're moving on to different areas to be like, okay, now that you got these new experiences, now that you start to fill up your cup, you start to fill up your knowledge a little bit, now you could, okay, now I'm going to empty out somewhere and learn from that spot, learn from those places. And all the stuff that you learned, you now disperse. You now are able to help with those things. Somebody else's water over there, somebody else's cloud, they might not be able to see exactly the same things that you see. They might not be able to experience the same things that you experience because they weren't in that same environment. But from them actually going through those different states, they're actually able to see what is happening there. Because they went from that liquid form, and then they went to the gas form. So with that, you can see that you drop down into a different area to learn stuff. So I'm still talking about the gas form of it, then I'm gonna go back to steam. So when you think about steam, you're like, okay, that condenses and it does different things. It might freshen you up, cleanse you out, but it gets really hot. It might get muggy. It might get different things. It creates different stimulation. So as you're changing, there might be those times where you're like, oh man, I'm not sure what's going on. I'm having these different problems. I'm having these different situations because, you're changing. Your perspective is changing. So now you have to change the way you act to actually, reflect the different change in your perspective. Because I talk about, you actually putting in the work and actually applying those different things. If you don't, once you start transforming and changing, if you don't actually, change your actions to adapt to your perspective, then you just go back to what you were doing before, and it'll actually settle down, and it's not actually going to get to rise up into the clouds and go into the next area so that you can, branch out and see what's going on, and even and pitch your play and actually flow to where you're trying to get it to flow to. But the steam can then come in, and after it gets really hot, it starts burning up. It gets that heat, that fire element that you're playing with it as well. Because of the friction that it builds up, because of that energy, that currency that it builds up, these different things within you as you're actually going up in vibration and awareness, there's going to be that different friction, that different currency that you're doing that's actually going within you and outside of yourself, and you start to see it around you, and it'll start having different, plays on your environment. It'll have different physical plays that you can see. It'll have different mental plays that you can see, different spiritual plays that you might be able to see as well. Depending on what level you're at and what, how much of that awareness you actually put in, how much of that work that you actually put in. But you can see that if you get too much, it can burn you. Steam can get really hot. I work in the kitchen. I've seen it. Steam burns are pretty bad, because it's so volatile. It's hit that liquid form, that gas form. It took so much energy to turn to that gas, and then it hits your skin, and then it starts to burn. It starts to change it up because you weren't ready for it. But if you are transforming and you're going with the flow, you've warmed up, you've heated up, you turned up along with the flow. So now that when that steam hits you, it's just like a steam ring. Like once that steam hits you, now it feels good. It's actually doing things to help you, actually keep you raising up until you get to the form of clouds where you start to see what's going on around you. But that's a little bit into the actual gas form of it. But then we have, with water, the solid form. So when you go into it, you'll see that the solid form can be considered a few different things because, technically liquid is a solid. It's just a more immutable solid. It's a more transferable solid. So even with that, it has different forms. It has different ways that you can go into it and think about it. But I was talking earlier about the glaciers freezing up. How the water changes states. You can have that mode where, okay, instead of actually rising up into the steam and actually going up and doing that, now you become condensed. You're so condensed and so cold. You let out all that fire energy, that heat energy. Now it's cold, it's ice, it's solid. Now I'm not saying that's a bad thing, because some people might be like, oh, well now that I'm stagnant, this is a bad thing. You can learn stuff by being that still. People say, oh, be still like the water. Well, what type of water? Liquid water, gas water, or solid water, as in ice, because when you have that ice, you have that slickness, you can slide, you can go different places that you weren't able to go before. Before back in history, when they talk about mankind, transferring different continents, they weren't able to until they built boats, unless it was so cold that the oceans were freezing up, that the water was freezing up, allowing them to go to different areas. So once you get to that state of that solid ice form, you can be in a state to where you can now use that as a platform to move, a platform to keep flowing. That's why, with that salt water in the ocean, how the salt starts separating from the ice, you're still flowing. Different parts of yourself is going deeper to find out different things, and part of yourself is still staying there to observe. But that's for you to, again, do your own inner search and outer search on. And I really do encourage you guys to go back and look at this video a couple times, because I put quite a bit into here. So I want you guys to really think about these different things and actually go out and make your observations so that you'll be able to see it, you'll be able to experience it. Don't take my word for it, take your own word for it. But as you start to see that, when you get to that solid form, and you start to see how that solid form can actually make you start thinking about things that are a little bit higher, think about things that are a little bit different, because you now got to the point where you're not just still, you're also not moving. You're also at the point of calmness, so calm that you can see how everything else is moving. That's another layer of your meditation that you can go to, and to think about it as you take it to the point of not just being calm, but you being so calm that you can see the movement of everything. And you'll probably see the movement within yourself, because just because it's a solid, it's that ice, doesn't mean that it's forming. Think about when you put a water bottle in the freezer and how it expands, and then that water bottle goes to bust and stuff. You know, so as it's turning into a solid, it's still expanding, it's still growing. So there is still that motion, but it's in a different motion. It's a different form because it's just transferring states. It's transforming states. And once you start to see how it starts to transform in those different states, you'll start to be like, okay, now I can observe different things about myself. I can observe different things about what's going on around me. You're not just seeing it from the liquid form. You're seeing it from the gas form, the solid form. You're seeing the ocean, rivers, the lakes. You're seeing how they all interplay with each other. Like that glacier that's way over there, that wouldn't even happen if the ocean didn't start to evaporate and go over here, or if this area, didn't start to, the energy start to dissipate to the point to where now it's being able to condense up and become more solid and get that different type of energy. Because just because it's cold doesn't mean that it's not an energy that you can use. It's not an energy that can help fuel you. I talk a lot about sparking that fire. Well, you can spark a type of cold fire as well, because when you think about fire, it has different temperatures. It also has those different colors. But I'm not going to go into that. That's for my next video. I'm going to actually go a little bit deeper into fire. But when you see the water and the solid form of the water with the ice, you'll start to see how calm you can get, how you can actually make those observations. And when you start to see that movement, that's a more stable movement. It might be a little bit slower because you're actually observing different things. You're observing a little bit more. And then once it starts to melt, starts to heat up, starts to get that friction, that momentum, start building up a little bit more, and you start raising up. Then you go back to liquid and gas and solid. It's a whole cycle. It's always transferring. It's always transforming into the different forms. So you got to be just like water. When you say flow like water in all the states, in all the forms. Don't limit yourself to just one form of water. Go through all the different forms of water until you can see how that actually will affect how you interplay with everything. Because water can be hot, water can be cold, it can be warm, it can provide life, it can take away life, it can have different things that absorb into it. Because you can dilute stuff with water, then water can be overpowering, it can be underpowering. You might need more of it or less of it depending on the situation. So this again is for you to do your inner search and your outer search, your research on, for you to be able to get these things and actually experience these things in your reality. I don't want you to take my word for it. I want you to take your word for it. I want you to be able to actually experience it, so where you're not just thinking about it, you actually can understand it, understand it, and eventually overstand it. But that's just a little bit into the water element. And if you guys have any questions on it or anything, feel free to write in the comment section or hit me up on my Instagram, Transformational Knowledge with TK. And then we can go a little bit deeper into it, especially if you start having different experiences that you might want to talk about. Because I know it's hard, for certain people to once you start to have these experiences, to actually reach out and talk to somebody. I'm here. Don't be afraid to actually reach out. I'm going to make sure that you're actually able to feel that you're able to talk. You're not going to be uncomfortable talking. You're not going to be in a state to where you have to worry about it. You're going to be able to flow like water. You're going to be able to, okay, now that I've gotten this different information from this pool, I can take something from over here as well and then combine it together. We don't have to be solid and certain people you talk about spirituality, you got to talk about one way. They're being more toward one form of it. They're being more toward the solid form of it. I'm going to be more toward all the forms of it. And that's what I want you to be as well, because I don't want you to limit yourself. I want you to be that limitless being that you are. But that's about all I want to talk about today. So if you guys want to check out my other videos, and as well check out some of the other Connects videos, I have a link to the description below. And then also, if you are getting those experiences, you want to get a little bit more deep into different subjects, check out the Astro Solstice channel and the Reprogram the Matrix channel. And then if you really are ready to start taking those next steps, go ahead and check out the private community at reprogramthematrix.com. That's all I'm going to talk about today, guys. High vibes, peace in and out, my full love.